Hello and welcome to the Patron Program. Jason Meyer here with episode 3, The Poetry of the Paint. Today we're going to look at several different artists. We're going to take a close look. We're going to step right up to those paintings and put our noses in it. And we're going to investigate the individual pieces of paint and how they come together to create the artwork that we enjoy. You know, it's not always obvious, but photos and videos cannot truly capture the spirit of the painting. To truly appreciate the painting, it has to be in person, especially by the greats, because really each brushstroke does push that painting forward or draw you in. In today's episode, I'm going to try to give you a little bit of a sense of some of those things that happen when you're staring these paintings down face to face. And I hope that encourages you, whenever we're able to go out and look at some paintings in person, your local museum or art galleries, or your local art walk. But for now, we're going to start with the king of painters, Rembrandt, and find out just what makes him king. Speaking of the poetry of the paint today, Rembrandt is the logical place to begin. He could handle oil paint like no one before him or after. Each piece of paint was used to draw you closer and closer, to make you look him in the eye. As he sits there, fully present and three-dimensional. And the paint builds until it climaxes right around the eye. And that climaxing paint forms a vortex, sucking you into the eye, the window of the soul. Is he showing you his soul, or is it our own souls we're looking at? Rembrandt's self-portraits, particularly in his later life, showed a wisdom, an understanding, and a technical ability to handle the paint that truly is unmatched. In this particular painting, we're going to go very close and see what makes it so great. At the bottom of his hat, right before his hat touches the forehead, we can see the little bit of decoration, little pieces of yellow paint. Each piece an artwork in itself, and then on top of that he's orchestrated the whole string of them to be something bigger. As we look at the top of the ear and the hair right above it, it's hard to imagine applying paint and controlling it. There seems to be millions of years of history right in this little bitty patch of his painting. And the eyes, like always, are drawing you in, almost like a vortex. The little bit of gray-green you see outside the eye is actually the stained canvas itself. A feat that's unbelievable. Down by the mouth, we see the head emerge from the distance, and as it travels around towards the front of the mouth and then across, it climaxes. But the way each piece of paint has a life unto its own, all the while contributing fully to the whole of the painting. Believe it or not, what you're looking at right here is his hands folded in his lap. And even in these quiet passages, they have their own little climax. But just a small one, with the softest of releases, not to call too much attention unto itself. This is the portrait we've just looked at. Can you see the folded hands? A greater understanding of what went into creating the face and the head, and how there's nothing in the painting that's going to distract you from looking at him in the eye. Let's turn now to a couple contemporary painters, starting with Odd Neerdrum, who are following in the wake of Rembrandt. Along with the light and shadow, there's the element of the psychological weight, with the human face carrying quite a bit of psychological weight for us. So even when it's not lit up, it's still a force that needs to be balanced in the painting. This self-portrait of Odd Neerdrum is a good place to explore the psychological weight versus the weight of paint. Consider the dull colors of the face when you compare it to the white cloth and his white fingernails, along with the shimmering yellow. Yet, the face holds its own. Another contemporary painter working in the spirit of Rembrandt is David Leffel. Like Rembrandt, Leffel understands the power of looking someone in the eye, yet keeping all the action outside and leaving just the mystery in the eye, so there's plenty of room for the viewer's participation. The light. There seems to actually be a light inside the painting lighting his forms. As the light falls across the forms of the head and the hair, you can feel the bone, you can feel the hair, you can see the light diminish as it turns away. A hand holding a paintbrush seemingly coming right at you. But there's a real sense of presence, of atmosphere, of near to far created on a completely flat surface. And the poetry of the paint is always there. We're lucky enough to have some photos of a demonstration by Mr. Leffel, and I think the starts are very telling. Notice he hasn't got to the details at all, but he set up the big pieces that are going to hold the light. The background, the back collar of the shirt, the shadow of the face has made a nice landing for the light, where all the action will take place. And as he builds the light, again, even in the early phases, with the idea of bringing you to the eye, to looking the sitter in the eye, to exposing his and our soul. And if we flip it back into black and white, that you can see the large structure which gives the paintings their power of a single light and a single dark, and not a bunch of small pieces. All the form in the light holds together as lighter than the background. And this is the last stage of the demonstration that we have a photograph of. But even in a quick demonstration, you can see that there's a presence. There's almost like there's a real human being there, rather than some flat pieces of paint. And if we dig just a little bit deeper under the hood and look at the palette that was used to create this painting, notice how it's organized into two piles only. the light, and the dark. And the variations in color happen within those piles. The light stays lit and the dark stays dark. Like Rembrandt, the handling of the paint, the soft edges, the hard edges, the life of each piece of paint contributing to the whole is absolutely astounding. Let's shift gears here with another contemporary painter, Daniel Gerhardt's. And we're going to shift gears to where we go a little bit lighter and more colorful, not quite so focused, and so it's not quite as intense. Most people, especially in today's contemporary society, usually prefer this type of work. Again, the eyes and everything are there, but the whole painting's not working to draw you there. More, it's telling you about the environment in which everything's taking place in. And there's more color there, dispersed along wider areas, for a little bit of a lighter, more colorful, not so focused feel. And as you look, you can begin to think that it's just color, color, color everywhere. But we're lucky enough to have a shot of Mr. Gerhardt's palette, and we'll look at that in just a minute. So backlit in sunlight is one of the things he's known for. And the palette we have is working on a painting similar to this, where the light is behind the subject wearing a white dress. And so we're going to take a look at some of those colors in that white dress. Does that surprise you? What you thought was such pure, raw color turns out to actually be quite gray. One of the secrets of painting is it's all about relationships. And so it can be quite deceiving. The next time you look at these trees that look so orange and red, or the clouds in the sky that appear so bright blue or purple, or even pink, remember those piles of paint. And it won't take the enjoyment out of the paintings. I think it actually adds a little more to them. We started our first episode, our program, talking about accuracy and what accuracy is. And today we've come to poetry. Now within the poetry, you have to understand these things. But art or poetry is more about just the technical aspect. For instance, this Tippolo drawing is not very technical, but it's all there. It represents the movement and flight and action. How do you technically paint movement or paint flight or variety? Another contemporary painter, Douglas Fryer, has some beautiful landscapes. And before you think, oh, my grandma could do that, again, I encourage you to step up and take a closer look. All is not what it seems. And the poetry of the paint is a large part of what makes the painting truly beautiful. And as you stick your nose right in the painting, there's not so much to understand as there is just to be awe-inspired by. These seemingly solid subjects turn into just a mass of color and blank canvas, dark and white. There's as much beauty in each piece of paint as there is in the whole. Again, the subtle variations in the seeming places where nothing is happening really takes the painting beyond representation and into the world of art. The last artist we'll look at today was famous for his females. But I always love the energy of which the painting is born out of. That abstract nothingness is so beautiful unto itself. So today we've looked at Rembrandt and how he brought you to the eye of the sitter, to the soul. We looked at Odd Neerdrum and how he uses the psychological weight along with the weight of paint. We saw how Mr. Lafelle got a sense of light, atmosphere, and actuality into his work. Mr. Gerhardt's lightened up, added a little more color, diffused the focus a little bit for a warmer, more inviting, not quite so intense works of art. Mr. Fryer and his beautiful landscapes, and we finished with Pinot and his beautiful women. I hope you enjoyed exploring some of those works of arts and really digging down and getting into them and getting into the paint and seeing the life that the paint has independent of the painting. And as long as that independent life also works towards a common goal, the overall work itself, it's amazing what some of these artists have conceived and created with their own hands. I truly could spend days and days wandering around the inside of these works, like a wonderful camping trip or walk in the woods. It's just constant new discovery. And what I've found with the great works of art, that the more time you spend with them, the more interesting and the better they get. You would think you come back to something and after a while, you've seen it, there's nothing else there. But somehow the great ones, they just never stop. They keep pulling you in and giving you more and more each time you visit. Nothing really substitute for seeing works of art in person, especially the great works of art. So when we're able to again, I hope you'll have a chance to get out and look at some of your museums and art galleries or art walks. The internet, videos, and photos are a great way to explore and get introduced to some of the paintings. But in the end, nothing substitute for seeing the works in person. Well, until our next episode, where we'll continue to explore works of art, this is Jason Meyer, signing off.